Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Radio 5G. This is Michael Henry Dunn with my co-host Nancy Hopkins. And Radio 5G is a joint project of the Sacred Academy of Geoenergetics and Cosmic Reality, LLC. And we've shared with you before a lot of very solid information about the documented health dangers of the 5G rollout. And we've also touched on the other aspects of the 5G rollout having to do with surveillance and control. Now, the health aspects are so well documented with so many peer-reviewed studies and so much information on the harmful effects of EMF and Wi-Fi that's been the main focus for a lot of people. And why not? Because people are getting sick as we speak. And the rise of the incidence of brain tumors, the documented impact of EMF and Wi-Fi on fertility, miscarriages, diabetes, a whole range of health effects, to say nothing, of course, of what it's doing to the biosphere, which is already severely impacted by 4G, EMF, and Wi-Fi. And, of course, those of you who are part of the Shungite community know about the miraculous ability of Shungite to help restore bee colony collapse. And so the evidence out there of the effect on the biosphere is also huge. What we're going to share with you today is from a powerful new documentary called The 5G Dragnet. This is from James Corbet, which goes into very solid detail about the surveillance aspect of the so-called Internet of Things. And this documentary contains interviews with people such as David Petraeus during his tenure as the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, addressing specifically how the CIA would be using the massive data collection of the Internet of Things to have total surveillance control. This documentary also goes into the history of what is called the technocrat agenda, going all the way back to the 1930s. Oh, if only we could completely control society by being able to monitor every single human being's every transaction and everything about them. Then we'd be in paradise. Well, that was the long-range plan that eventually gave rise to 5G. So, Nancy, I believe we've got some great information from our good friend Mark Steele over in the UK, going into the actual technology of some of the 5G rollout that enables this pervasive surveillance. And then we're actually going to share with everybody this documentary itself, the 5G Dragnet from James Corbet, which you can find. We're going to share the link with you. You can find it at ForbiddenKnowledgeTV.net. So, Nancy, yeah, you've also got a clip from Mark Steele for us, right?
Yes. We had a show that was put up on YouTube by somebody else. They put video to it. We were, grateful that they did this because they got so many views. But one of the things is that when you walk into one of our shows and you start hearing us say the things we're hearing, you're not hearing the vast amount of information that we do present from show to show to show. And so people, were saying, where's the proof? Where's the proof? Well, the proof is in Mark Steele. Mark Steele has been certified by 2 judges to be the authority on 5G weapons, not just the 5G technology, but as a weapon, as something that can surveil you and then monitor every single aspect of your life, and on top of that, kill you. All right? I mean, it's a preposterous situation to even encounter, but Mark is the authority on it. So when they're asking for proof, Mark is the proof. Mark is telling you. His 30 years in the business, working in weapon technology. He didn't make weapons. He made technology that made the weapons, electronic weapons, safer. Okay, so he absolutely is an authority on the technology. So when you hear the Corbett report and you hear about all this 5G surveillance, where's the proof? Well, mostly they don't say that too much when you're hearing somebody like Colbert talking about it in the big presentation. No, they're going to surveil you. To understand the full implications of it, you really have to go to people that are technically qualified to tell us, and that's Mark. So what I want to do is I want to give you 2.5 minutes of Mark just talking about one little antenna system, okay, that makes the difference. It's like forensic evidence, because he was accosting a linesman who was up there trying to put these things in, and the guy got so mad at him, he threw whatever he had in his hands that happened to be a circuit board that happened to be attached to this antenna. And this antenna, Mark knew, nobody else would know what this thing was. So I want him to explain it, and to explain the concept that 5G is, people think, okay, the trees are there, the trees block 5G, so why wouldn't my concrete building block 5G? Because they're making us focus on information. As damaging it is, it's not their agenda. Their agenda is surveillance. And the surveillance aspect of it, yes, they can kill us, but, the initial thing is to, as you're going to hear in the documentary, is to control. It's absolutely stated, control. Okay, so when Mark presents his that 3 minutes, he references the frequencies that are sub-gigahertz, that actually can penetrate concrete, that can see into your homes. So that's what I wanted to say, is that there is forensic evidence, absolute proof, that they can visually see inside your homes. Never mind the rest of the documentary that tells you, the rest of the story. So without any more, let's just stop. It's just going to go from Mark right into the documentary.
Yeah, Nancy, before you do that,
Nancy? Okay,
Nancy?
yes.
Yeah, just a second. So if you could pause after Mark, I'd like to just read a little bit of the intro material they have here for the documentary. Can you do that before
sure.
we go into the documentary?
Sure.
Okay,
sure.
It's only take a couple of minutes, but it'll be helpful.
Yeah, not a problem.
The next image is 5G in the cityscape. This is radar. This is weapons capability radar. All right, that's what it.
We're looking at photo 13 now, Mark.
I think so. The next image is a 3D mapping image. Yeah. Can everybody see that?
It says 5G neural networks and their battlefield radar application at the top, or are we on to the next one?
Be on the next one.
Okay, photo 14 then, right? Yeah. Microwave radar 3D mapping.
Right. This is what the scanner, the image I showed before, that small antenna. This is what it can see. So it's basically a target acquiring. It's for urban environment interrogation. Sub-gigahertz signals, because 5G is not these higher frequency waveforms. Let's get that out of the way. All right. Everybody talks about higher frequency, doesn't travel very well. No, 5G is sub-gig. The main rollout of it, the blanket coverage is sub-gigahertz. And what it's allowed us to do is to look deeply into the urban environment. That's 3D mapping, that's radar, that's off the battle space, but it's for the urban environment interrogation, and that's an image of a very similar transmitter to you saw early on, the little green thing with a copper strip. The next image...
just quickly, Mark, let me just drop something in here, which is that in Taos, when some of our activists there approached some of the city council, they said, well, this 5G thing, this is being rolled out woven into our 911 emergency response system. And you don't want us to not be able to know exactly where you are in your house when you're having a heart attack, do you? And so what you're showing us is exactly that. This is not about you getting faster downloads for your favorite TV show. This is about they will know where you are at all times. And, our people respond to them and said, okay, if you're worried about lawsuits, about a heart attack in some instance where somebody's like in a closet and not in the bathroom, and they can't get to them in time, well, you haven't begun to dream about the kind of lawsuits that you personally will be dealing with for approving this deadly technology. So anyway, just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. Well, that technology will give you a heart attack. I'll show you later on heart.
Oops. Okay, Michael.
Okay, so that was our good friend Mark Steele sharing with us the exact technological details about how the 5G rollout has a massive surveillance capability. And we're going to share with you now a documentary short from James Corbett of ForbiddenKnowledgeTV.net. And he has a reputation, James Corbett does, of being a very credible alternative journalism source. You're going to find a lot of disinformation and distortion on both sides of the political spectrum when it comes to alternative journalism. And of course, mainstream journalism is almost entirely disinformation. But James Corbett has a good reputation of being a pretty good place to go. Anyway, here's a little intro that on his site describing what this documentary, which is called 5G Dragnet, is about. It says, many of us are rightly concerned about the dangers to human health posed by the 5G network's numerous small-cell millimeter wave transmitters placed every 500 feet in all directions around us. Like the previous generations of wireless communications, 5G has not been adequately tested for health safety. But as legitimate as such concerns may be, the rarely discussed privacy and surveillance issues posed by 5G are even more concerning. James Corbett warns us that, quote, to concentrate solely on the health effects of 5G is to miss the broader picture of total surveillance and the technocratic dystopia this technology enables. For those who don't happen to be familiar with the term, dystopia is the opposite of utopia, utopia being a place where everything's great, dystopia being a future where everything sucks. And we're under, it's 1984. George Orwell. According to James Corbett, the global smart city infrastructure represents the greatest threat to freedom in the history of humanity. Quote, the price that one pays for this world of robotic comfort and convenience is control. Control over our data, control over our security, control over our lives. If we think Google or Facebook has mismanaged our personal data, multiply the quantity of that data and the personal security, and then replace our Silicon Valley overlords with the Chinese Communist Party. Huawei is the current leader in the development of the 5G infrastructure. Their software has been shown to be laden with backdoors and zero-day vulnerabilities as if intentionally engineered to enable cyber attacks. So what is the rush? For every new object we buy to present another opportunity to be hacked, robbed, or spied upon, especially if opting out of the surveillance grid is not an option. Members of the intelligence community have gloated openly about the myriad opportunities for monitoring and remote controlling items of interest. So just to touch briefly on what he's referring to here when he says every new object we buy to present another opportunity. The Internet of Things is all about every single thing from, your juicer to your baby monitor to your computer to your cell phone to your refrigerator to be part of the Internet of Things. In other words, totally exposed to surveillance. Corbett says the 5G-enabled Internet of Things is a necessary part of the creation of the system of total control, physical, financial, and political, that the technocrats have been lusting for over a century now. The world of the technocrats, the world of the smart grid, and the world of constant real-time surveillance of everything would not be possible without the 5G network that is being installed right now. and quantum computing powered artificial intelligence, you add that to the system of total surveillance and remote control, and we will soon have a world that is unrecognizable. Now, before everybody goes to, total checkout of cognitive dissonance and bleak depression over this, we always try to point out here at Radio 5G that we are about hope, that we are about divine intelligence integrating with organic intelligence to eventually integrate AI to the service of human freedom and comfort, not to make us slaves to a technocratic agenda which is about the control by a corrupt elite of all of humanity. That's the story, folks. So that's what we're here to share with you at Radio 5G. So with that introduction, we'd now like to actually play for you James Corbet's excellent short documentary called The 5G Dragnet. You ready for that, Nancy?
Experience at home and across industries as we connect virtually everything. By 2020, analysts estimate that there will be more than 20 billion installed IoT devices around the world, generating massive amounts of data. With access to this kind of information, industries of all kinds will be able to reach new levels of efficiency as they add products, services, and capabilities.
As you may have heard by now, telecom companies are currently scrambling to implement fifth-generation cellular network technology. Dubbed 5G, these networks will make use of millimeter-length electromagnetic waves, also dubbed extremely high-frequency or EHF radiation, to transmit information faster than ever before. 5G networks promise to deliver data 100 times faster than the existing 4G networks, and reduce latency as much as 98%. The promise of 5G was promoted by Tom Wheeler, then chair of the Federal Communications Commission, when he made a presentation on the U.S. government's vision for the rollout of 5G in America in 2017.
Yes, 5G will connect the Internet of everything. If something can be connected, it will be connected in a 5G world. But with the predictions of hundreds of billions of microchips connected in products from pill bottles to plant waterers, you can be sure of only one thing. The biggest Internet of Things application has yet to be imagined. Here's the key. The interconnected world that we live in today is the result of decisions made a decade ago. The interconnected world of the future will be the result of decisions we must make today. And that is why 5G is a national priority.
But after the initial surge of hype that surrounds any new technology, the dark reality of this new 5G-connected Internet of Things is starting to come to light. The most immediately apparent aspect of this dark reality is the danger to human health that the 5G network's ubiquitous and powerful transmitters present. As an increasing body of research shows, the harmful effects of electromagnetic radiation present in current mobile technologies will be amplified by orders of magnitude in the much more powerful and much denser, extremely high-frequency radiation network that 5G relies on. As retired U.S. government career scientist Dr. Ronald M. Powell noted in his comment to the FCC on the proposed 5G rollout, this technology must be opposed because it would greatly extend FCC's current policy of the mandatory irradiation of the public without adequate prior study of the potential health impact and assurance of safety. It would irradiate everyone, including the most vulnerable to harm from radio frequency radiation: pregnant women, unborn children, young children, teenagers, men of reproductive age, the elderly, the disabled, and the chronically ill. But another, even more neglected aspect of the 5G dark reality is that in a world where all objects are wired and constantly communicating data to one another through a 5G network, an Internet of Things, in other words, privacy and security would be next to impossible. Even the mainstream is now admitting that the unprecedented amounts of data flowing through the 5G network, from appliance usage to personal communications to transaction information, is a treasure trove that, if it were to fall into the wrong hands, would be a formidable weapon.
Huawei wants to become a major player in 5G outside of China, but it's facing pressure internationally because of cybersecurity concerns dogging the company. The US is urging its allies to block Huawei from 5G projects in their countries.
Maron says China is using mobile technology as a tool for spying, and he's seen the evidence.
They are actually using it for massive surveillance against their own population. We looked on the Huawei equipment to the level of every single chip there, and what we found is not very pleasant. This is not a commercial company stuff. This is a kind of nearly a military grade stuff.
We have China coming in with their 5G network. All of the things that it's like we're living in 1956, and they're not. And they don't care about rights. They don't care about people.
The implication of these mainstream pundits' pontifications is that 5G only represents a threat in the hands of the Russians or the Chinese or other supposed enemies of America. But what about the companies that are manufacturing these products? Why are the big tech giants who have so signally abused the public's misplaced trust for decades now to be trusted with creating big databases of sensitive personal information on every imaginable aspect of our daily lives? And why is the government of the US and its allies around the globe, governments that have been caught time and again illegally spying on their own populations and violently suppressing dissent, suddenly to be trusted as stewards of such a system? The truth is that the development of 5G networks and the various networked products that they will give rise to in the global smart city infrastructure represents the greatest threat to freedom in the history of humanity. This is the 5G Dragnet. You're tuned into the Corbett Report. The vision of the future offered by the proponents of this next-generation cellular technology is one in which every object that you own will be a smart object, communicating data about you, your movements, and your activities in real time via the ultra-fast 5G network. From the grandiose, self-driving cars and remote surgery, to the mundane, garbage cans that let garbage trucks know when they're full, everything around us will be constantly broadcasting information through the Internet of Things if the 5G boosters get their way. But beyond the glossy sci-fi fantasy presented in the slick advertisements for this smart world of the future is a creepy and unsettling glimpse into a technological dystopia. One in which social experiences are shared by strapping VR goggles to your face, and interaction with humans is reduced as much as possible in favor of interaction with machines, gadgets, and personal assistants that are there to cater to your every whim, for a price. And, as some are only now starting to realize, the price that one pays for this world of robotic comfort and convenience is control. Control over our data, control over our security, and control over our lives.
We just hooked up the Nest maybe a month ago.
Abby Laguidao and Conrado Casalo wanted something to keep their family safe, so they installed Nest, a smart home security camera system.
What drives me crazy is yesterday was the only day I decided to stay home. He's always here. They never said anything. Ever.
Yesterday, Abby was alone with her two kids when she started hearing voices coming from their Nest.
Then they started cussing and saying, "Shut the F up, you N-word."
At that point, Abby had figured out that someone had hacked into their security system.
Shut the f*** up.
She called her partner, Conrado.
Somebody is in the Nest and is watching us and is talking to us right now.
I think within 5 years, most people will have at least...
That is something out of a horror movie right there.
Man, can you imagine it?
Like we knew something was going to go on. That scared.
That
scared the tar out of me.
That was a real jump.
And we're going to go ahead and unlock the door, her back door.
Oh.
I think that was your lock.
That was our lock.
Let's go look. Come on.
And that isn't any laughing matter.
See, but that's the real fear, right?
That,
the other stuff's kind of funny, whatever. But I mean, someone can unlock your house.
Although, if someone really wants to get into your house, you can pick a lock.
Yeah, but isn't that the modern day? There it goes again. I mean, isn't that the modern day lockpick? There's a guy outside with a laptop who's opening and closing your door lock.
It is, and I don't like it.
After their stunt on the highway, Chris and Charlie still wanted to show me a couple of other tricks. Below a certain speed, they can control the Jeep's steering as long as it's in reverse, pop its locks, mess with the speedometer, and, of course, disable the brakes.
Okay, hold on tight. Hold on. Oh,
he's not getting out of that. I don't think so. We're going to be doing some pushing.
It isn't hard to see why these smart technologies, and the 5G network that enables them, are a security concern. And, in that context, it isn't hard to see why Chinese companies like Huawei and ZTE are now being targeted as potential national security threats and barred from developing 5G network infrastructure in country after country. After all, with access to that much data and information, let alone the ability to communicate with, hack into, or disable everything from our smart TV to our smart door locks to our smart car, a potential adversary with control of the 5G network would have nearly limitless power to surveil and control a target population. But given that these powers, the ability to access our most intimate data and to take control of our homes and personal appliances, are not bugs, but features of the 5G connected Internet of Things, the question is, why is there such a headlong rush to connect this network? Is demand for smart dishwashers and smart toothbrushes and smart baby monitors really so overwhelming that it requires us to put the security of our homes, our possessions, and our families at risk? What is really driving this frenzy for a world where every new object we buy presents another potential vulnerability, another device that can be hacked into to steal our information, to track our location, to record our conversations, and to disable our appliances? One answer to this question lies in the fact that intelligence agencies, whether Chinese or Russian, CIA or MI6, Mossad or CSIS, will make use of the vast amounts of data flowing through these networks to spy on the public. In fact, the members of the so-called intelligence community do not even hide this fact. They openly gloat about it. In 2012, then CIA Director David Petraeus admitted at a summit hosted by In-Q-Tel, the CIA's venture capital firm, that the CIA was not just able to, but actually eager to use these smart devices as a tool for spying. Transformational is an overused word, but I do believe it properly applies to these technologies, Petraeus was quoted as saying, particularly to their effect on clandestine tradecraft. Items of interest will be located, identified, monitored, and remotely controlled through technologies such as radio frequency identification, sensor networks, tiny embedded servers, and energy harvesters, all connected to the next generation internet using abundant, low-cost, and high-power computing. Lest there be any doubt about the intelligence community's intentions to use these devices to spy on the population, then Director of National Intelligence James Clapper confirmed this approach in a report to the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence in 2016. Smart devices incorporated into the electric grid, vehicles, including autonomous vehicles, and household appliances are improving efficiency, energy conservation, and convenience. However, security industry analysts have demonstrated that many of these new systems can threaten data privacy, data integrity, or continuity of services. In the future, intelligence services might use the IoT for identification, surveillance, monitoring, location tracking, and targeting for recruitment, or to gain access to networks or user credentials. Whistleblowers from within the intelligence establishment, whistleblowers like Russ Tice and Bill Binney, who are actively shunned by the same mainstream media that breathlessly reported on Edward Snowden, have already laid out in exhaustive detail how the NSA is collecting all data flowing through the internet as we know it. Every phone call, every email, every web search, every file stored to the cloud, everything that passes from one computer or phone to another is being stored, cataloged, databased, and data mined to construct detailed profiles of ordinary citizens. But now that the 5G network is promising to deliver us not an internet of phones and computers, but an internet of things, from cars and watches to fridges and hats to milk jugs and floor tiles, when every manufactured object is broadcasting information about you and your activities to the world at large by default, and when it is discovered that opting out of this surveillance grid is not an option, the true nature of the 5G panopticon will finally begin to dawn on the public. But by that point, it will already be too late.
Cities use data every day. Everything from showing you when your next train will arrive to measuring the air quality in different neighborhoods. Typically, all this information is spread out across a ton of different agencies and companies in a bunch of different file formats and spreadsheets. But at Quayside, we have the chance to start from scratch and build a single, unified digital platform that's transparent, open, and accessible for everyone working to make our cities better.
The leaders behind Toronto's first data-driven smart city are under fire tonight after yet another resignation. This time, a member of Waterfront Toronto's digital advisory panel quit and wrote a strongly worded letter on her way out, sharing her deep concerns about privacy and data control.
I want to get some feedback now from the former Information and Privacy Commissioner from the province of Ontario, who, when last you were here discussing this very topic, you were kind of bullish about it. And then I just couldn't but help notice that you've resigned from your involvement in all this. What happened?
And I didn't do it lightly. I wanted to draw attention to the fact that we had to make sure that all the personal data that was being collected automatically by the sensors and other technologies were de-identified at source, anonymized at source.
De-identified meaning?
Meaning no personal identifiers. You wouldn't know it's Ann Kavukian walking or you or this is my car or anything. And the reason that was critical is unlike most uses of what I call operational data, where the individual, the data subject, can exercise some control over the use, the operation of that data. They can consent to it, they can revoke consent, they can choose not to consent. They have some sense of control. With the data here, you have no control. It's all being collected automatically with the emerging technology, sensors, all picking up data.
But it is not just the intelligence agencies or the big tech conglomerates who are set to profit from the creation of this newer, stickier World Wide Web. In fact, the 5G-enabled Internet of Things is a necessary part of the creation of the system of total control, physical, financial, and political, that the technocrats have been lusting over for a century now. As viewers of Why Big Oil Conquered the World will know by now, the technocrats are adherents to an ideology dubbed technocracy, which holds that all modern-day problems, be they social, economic, or political, can be solved by the scientific engineering of society. In the technocrats' vision, teams of engineers, scientists, economists, and other specialists, if given access to enough data about the world around them, could scientifically balance production and consumption such that inflation, recession, geopolitical conflict, and other sources of strife will be eliminated forever. As the co-founder of Technocracy Inc., M. King Hubbard laid out in the group's founding document, the Technocracy Study Course, the amount of data needed to bring this techno-utopian vision to reality is truly mind-boggling. In the Technocracy Study Course, Hubbard, like a good technocrat, laid out the exact conditions that would need to be met for this vision to come to pass. According to him, technocracy would require all energy usage and all consumer spending throughout the nation to be calculated and registered on a continuous and instantaneous basis, a 24/7 inventory of all production and consumption, a complete registry of all products available for sale, where they were produced, how much energy was expended in their production, and where and when they were sold. And finally, a specific registration of the consumption of each individual, plus a record and description of the individual. Hubbard's vision was not just that of a totalitarian society in which every detail of every interaction was recorded and reported to a central authority, but, for the 1930s, the concept of continuously and instantaneously updated registries of every good in the economy was not just audacious, but borderline insane. As unimaginable as a real-time database keeping track of every transaction and every manufactured product in the economy was in the 1930s, that is exactly the world we are looking at as smart meters collect information on smart appliances connected to other smart objects through the Internet of Things. And, crucially, the sheer amount of data being generated in this smart grid and the constant real-time communication required to keep the system functioning would be impossible without the 5G network. 5G is not just a neutral mobile network. It is the backbone for a system of total surveillance which has been written about and worked toward for the better part of a century. The world of the technocrats, the world of the smart grid, and the world of constant real-time surveillance of everything would not be possible without the 5G network that is being installed right now. And, as Josh Del Sol of the Take Back Your Power movement that is organizing resistance to smart meters, 5G networks, and other harmful technologies explains, the world of the technocrats is a world where privacy is a thing of the past.
So with the smart meters, they'll be able to tell exactly what's going on in your home at down to the microsecond, based upon 24/7 communication with all of your appliances, which will also in the future, if this goes through fully and if there's not a public backlash, all of your appliances will need to have a wireless transmitter on them, and they'll need to be, certified under some smart, program. So this means that not only, just stepping aside from one moment to the health issue, this means that not only is your smart meter emitting on average of 13,000 microwave pulses per day, but every one of your appliances is going to be doing the same thing because it will be needed to be communicating with the smart meter itself. So that is a serious concern. We'll get into that a little bit later. But as far as the privacy issue, just diving right in. March of this year, Wired magazine, the current CIA director, David Petraeus, was quoted as saying, "We're going to use smart appliances to spy on you." And it's almost like, and he was later down in the article, and it's very just putting it out there. It's kind of like, it's getting to a point now, James, I'm sure you're seeing this, is like, it's just getting more and more in your face, and it's kind of like this collective force of the controllers, and they're kind of saying, this is what we're going to do, and what are you going to do about it?
It should be clear by this point that the vision of the technocrats is in fact a nightmare for free humanity. It must be resisted every step of the way, and the battle over the 5G network rollout will be the front lines of this battle in the next few years. Thankfully, resistance is forming as the public is increasingly becoming aware of the health risks of 5G. Over 180 scientists and doctors from 36 countries have submitted a formal appeal to the European Union, warning of the potential serious health risks of 5G. City officials in Portland, Oregon are suing the federal government to stop 5G transmitters from being installed on city property, with councillors considering asking the federal government to study the health impacts of 5G on humans and make that information publicly available. This past March, Florence City Council invoked the precautionary principle when passing a motion that halts permission for 5G installation until a proper demonstration of the technology's safety. The Russian Defense Ministry has refused to transfer frequencies for 5G operation, effectively delaying 5G rollout in the country for years. Plans to deploy a 5G network in Brussels were halted earlier this year because, according to Environment Minister Céline Frémont, the people of Brussels are not guinea pigs whose health I can sell at a profit. It is heartening to see that the health effects of the extremely high-frequency radiation emitted by 5G transmitters is finally starting to break through to the public consciousness. But if we concentrate solely on the health effects of 5G, we risk falling into a trap. If the only danger of 5G was the danger to our health, then, if the safety of the technology could be demonstrated to the public, or an equivalent less harmful technology could be deployed, then there would be no more reason to resist. To concentrate solely on the health effects of 5G is to miss the broader picture of total surveillance in the technocratic dystopia that this technology enables. In this picture, the 5G network is a platform for a system in which every action, every transaction, every interaction that we have in our daily life is monitored, databased, and analyzed in real time. The 5G Dragnet is cinching like a noose around our necks. But will the public become informed of the dangers of this technology in time to stop the technocrats' vision from becoming our nightmare?
Secure 5G networks will absolutely be a vital link to America's prosperity and national security in the 21st century. 5G will be as much as 100 times faster than the current 4G cellular networks. It will transform the way our citizens work, learn, communicate, and travel. It'll make American farms more productive, American manufacturing more competitive, and American health care better and more accessible. Basically, it covers almost everything when you get right down to it. Pretty amazing. And just as 4G networks paved the way for smartphones and all of the exciting breakthroughs, they made possible so many things. This will be more secure and resilient. 5G networks will also create astonishing and really thrilling new opportunities for our people, opportunities that we've never even thought we had a possibility of looking at. We cannot allow any other country to outcompete the United States in this powerful industry of the future. We are leading by so much in so many different industries of that type, and we just can't let that happen. The race to 5G is a race America must win, and it's a race, frankly, that our great companies are now involved in. We've given them the incentive they need. It's a race that we will win.
So there you have it, Michael.
Yeah, pretty stunning. Our thanks to James Corbett for that excellent documentary, the 5G Dragnet. And I'm going to pull that link to Mr. Corbett's ForbiddenKnowledgeTV.net right now for us to share with everybody. And this is, an aspect of the 5G rollout that we've talked about, that Mark Steele, our good friend who's an energy weapons expert, has shared some aspects of it with you all. But this is the first time, thanks to James Corbett, that we've been able to go into it in some depth and share this aspect of the 5G rollout with you. And I think one of the most powerful things about this documentary is that you're hearing it in their own words. You are hearing David Petraeus, former CIA director, talk about the surveillance agenda behind 5G. You are hearing, you're hearing James Clapper, NSA chief. You're hearing, just the unabashed open agenda, but that somehow, behind the big telecom companies going, hey, faster downloads, you can stand at the airport gate and get 12 movies on your laptop before you take off instead of only 3. And for that, are we willing to sacrifice our health, our children's health, the health of the biosphere, and our privacy and our freedom? That is really what it is coming down to. And so we really applaud James Corbett for this excellent short documentary and offer him our appreciation, because this needs to get everywhere. Everybody needs to know about this. And at the end, he does the same thing that we do our best to do here at Radio 5G. And by the way, that is 5G-know.com, 5G-know.com. He does the same thing we do, which is to inspire hope, inspire everybody to wake up, take action. There is local action that can be taken, and humanity is not going to let this happen. It's not an overnight struggle, but it's my personal, very strong conviction that this is the game changer that is ultimately the greatest cost you can imagine, the greatest wake up you can imagine. If this doesn't stir you, nothing will. If the health of your kids, yourself, the planet, and total loss of privacy and, total 24 surveillance, if you're still a human being, if, here in this country, you remember what America was supposed to be about, we're saying no. So anyway, Nancy, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the documentary.
Well, the good thing here is that, with all this 5G, they'll be able to anticipate crime and probably stop it. Oh, wait a minute. I think that was a movie, The Minority Report. How did that end?
Yeah.
When when you, all right, I saw the video and took the audio, recorded it. But when I was listening to the audio, it was actually scarier than looking at the video. Because now you're forced to contemplate what do these words mean rather than look at somebody's interpretation of what they mean. And I honestly kept seeing Tom Cruise. He kept popping into my another Minority Report thing. What people don't seem to grasp, I think, is that this is a long time been planned for. And so, we have to look at it and say, well, if they've been planning for this since at least the 30s, what's the big push now? Why now? Why are they so desperate to get this out to the point that the leaders of the CIA, why would you want 5G? You're not supposed to be looking at America anyway. You're only supposed to be looking at foreign people. You're going to tell me you're going to use all this information and only look at the foreign people? I mean, not only are they blatantly explaining what they want to do, they're blatantly being treasonous in their statements.
Yeah, it's pretty stunning. It's as if Americans who cherish the ideas about what America was supposed to be about personal freedom, that we're living in some antiquated dream world. And that, we haven't caught up to the new reality. Hey, kids, just get used to it. I mean, the Constitution was nice and all, but, just get used to being a controlled part of a technocratic world. And sorry, that's not acceptable to us. And to do, this idea that the CIA is supposed to be only about domestic, about foreign intelligence. Well, that would be lovely if the CIA were in fact, at the service of American citizens. And there are all kinds of decent, patriotic, hardworking Americans who are in CIA who believe they are, and in many cases are, okay, there are terrorist threats out there, they're neutralizing them, they're tracking them. Behind the scenes, you can talk to CIA veterans privately who will talk about how they were trained in how to take down foreign economies, foreign governments that were not hostile, but it was simply about seizing the natural resources, putting nations into debt so that the International Monetary Fund could do what they do best, which is to impoverish nations, put them in the debt, seize their assets, their natural resources as the collateral on the loans. Gee, you're not able to pay that loan we put you into. Well, now they have your natural resources. CIA agents were trained in this, so they're not serving the American people. It's not about, let's keep an eye on foreign enemies. It's about how can we serve the corrupt elite who in fact pull the strings of the U.S. government, while we keep the people believing in the circus of democracy, right versus left, red versus blue. Nothing changes except that the technocratic agenda advances and, America as the purveyor of fascist control around the world continues on while we, fondly believe we're the good guys and we're fighting for democracy. Well, hopefully, that myth is getting dispelled and we're actually going to get a chance to return to the values that Americans really do still believe in and hold, a lot of us anyway, which you'll find in the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Gettysburg Address, the Bill of Rights. Sorry, these things aren't going away. And for all the oath keepers out there in CIA, in the Defense Department, in the intelligence community, who, when they took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, they actually meant it. There's plenty of those folks out there. We hope some of them are listening. That's my little speech.
Well, for those people that might not know or need facts, don't believe you. There's a book out there. It's called Economic Hitman by John Perkins. It was written quite a few, probably a decade or more ago, and he explains exactly what you we're talking about, because he was the man that orchestrated the downfall of half a dozen countries. And I mean, I've never understood how he survived, releasing that information. But because I think that they think we're so stupid we're not going to see it or believe it. But so it is, I mean, there is detailed documentation of the statements that you just made regarding taking down governments by taking over the economy. And of course, that's what that crazy thing in the 30s, the technocrats, what were they talking about? They were talking about taking over the economy, knowing every single thing that is made and how much it costs to make it. I mean, their first focus wasn't controlling the population, it was controlling the economy.
Yeah, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I'm like, any good businessman wants, the most up-to-date information, on his manufacturing, on what's moved, on what's sold, on how much it costs. That's just being a good business person and keeping track of inventory and sales and costs so that you can make good decisions. No problem there. But, it's there was another agenda behind all of that. You can have some so-called technocrat who wants the kind of useful information that we're talking about for a businessman, and it's not like he's necessarily a soulless reptilian, puppet of the corrupt elite. He's just, okay, he's a technocratic kind of guy who's, a cerebral type doing stuff that makes sense. But behind all that, is the larger agenda that we are now seeing roll out. And as he points out, as James Corbett points out in this documentary, okay, they're telling us, beware of the Chinese, beware of Huawei. Yeah, and for good reason. They're building in surveillance devices into Huawei 5G technology. But you can trust Facebook, Verizon, AT&T, Google. You can trust those folks. You can trust the folks who, Edward Snowden already revealed to us were totally in bed with massive surveillance and spying on the American people. It's all about the wonderful 5G paradise we're all going to live in. It's about 1984. It's about total surveillance and control. So, it's it's becoming more and more obvious, and I hope the people who are listening to this realize that we are not pushing gloom and doom here at Radio 5G. We are pushing freedom, basic values, human decency, the American principles embodied in the Constitution, we the people, in the Declaration of Independence, in the Bill of Rights, in the Gettysburg Address, government of the people, by the people, for the people, not for, a corrupt elite group of central bankers behind the Federal Reserve. That's been the reality behind the scenes for a lot of years. And, thanks to the internet, let's look at the bright side of things. That curtain's been torn away.
Can I just jump in here for a second? Because
yeah, sure.
The way I would say what you just said is it's actually humanity versus insanity.
Excellent. I love that slogan. Let's keep that.
Well, it's actually Ian Crane from the Great Britain has a YouTube station I highly recommend, and a show called Insanity versus Humanity. Because when you can give up your humanity and say, I don't even want to think, I don't want to even, I just want to, I could get into some really, provocative statements of what you might want to do. But, you're all playing all this video stuff, so, it's all delusional anyway, it's all in your mind. But you're not alive. You're not alive. Living is being, in the now, in the present, interacting with the things that are around you. Where you go, you're not alive. You're not alive in this reality. And, you might be in some other reality. If that's where you want to be, then God bless you. I hope this new world thing and this switch of realities happens quickly, and you people can go off into La La Land on your video scopes, playing digital whatever, and go off to wherever you're going to go. Because the rest of us are human beings, And human beings have the concept. Let's just take it to the basic. We have the concept that, we are a family. And that even in a family, people have secrets. People have things they may not want to tell. Well, it's all there for everybody to know. There is no secrets.
Yeah.
Okay? So within a family, you have, all these different personalities that are what make what gives the joy to life, what gives the flavor to life. And in this new world they want, everybody's going to be automated. There will be no variations in humanity. It'll be a strict, this is the way you are because we've decided that.
Yeah, exactly. I remember seeing a video of a CIA briefing. I don't know how it got out, but it's a room full of, we'll just call them, CIA technocrats being briefed on a new chemical that they're able to do a massive, aerosol spray from jets that they have found affects human DNA in such a way that they can actually remove the gene that is built into the wiring of the human brain in the fully developed human, which causes us to inquire into higher meaning, causes us to seek God. They said, it turns out if we spray this, this is just a boring, dull videotape. This isn't some conspiracy theory, sensationalistic thing. This is a boring, dull videotape thing. Yes, we have learned we can actually eliminate, spiritual seeking and religious zealotry in whole populations, and maybe we ought to, this is something we could be spraying over the Middle East. This is where it's going, that level of control, unless we say no. And so we're saying no. And, this information James Corbett is sharing here, it's just cut and dried, folks. This is, you're just hearing it from David Petraeus. You're hearing it from James Clapper. You're hearing it from people who are seeing the implementation of smart devices throughout a home and how easily hacked they are, not only by the intelligence community, but by some burglar or crook or home invader, who's decided, how hard is it for me to stand outside their house with the laptop and open their door, turn out their lights, deactivate the brakes, turn off the phone so they can't call the cops. Unless, of course, we just say no, opting out. You don't get to install that deadly 5G cell tower 200 feet from my kids. You don't get to do that. So that's what we're fighting for.
Mark will say that not only can they look in your house and do all that control, they'll actually know where your safe is and what the combination is to it.
They would, wouldn't they?
Yeah. This is the depth of the knowledge that they already essentially have focused they built the system to do that. The system is not built to do telecommunications. I can tell you that from not only listening to Mark and other authorities on it, but because I understand telecommunications. That was my job in the Army. So I understand this is not the same technology. And if you just think about it, you know that too. And plus the fact that they have an alternative. And I thought that was an excellent point that he made regarding the alternative. The alternative is, let's say, okay, I can go along with this smart world of smartness and think of everything, but I don't want you to kill me with this radiation. Oh, well, okay, then let's go to fiber optics. Because fiber optics will not kill you. That's one of the things that makes it really bizarre, is that if you had really wanted to be completely under the radar, why didn't you go with the fiber optics for telecommunications and all this other stuff? Because you can't target people with the telecommunications on a fiber optics underneath. You could probably, but then everybody's looking at the system more. And, it's easier to build them up above the ground than dig down and do this other stuff. Why are they so intent on rolling this out so fast that they're in our face? And I just want to, expand on that concept. They think of us as the people to be invisible. Stand up. If we all stand up, then we're indefeatable. And this is what we try to tell you, that this is an opportunity to come together as the family of human beings. You are not invisible. Stand up with us. Get in their faces and say no. And also, remember that we have archives for this radio show. You can go to 5G-KNOW.com. And you'll see the link to the radio. Come to the radio and hit the archives. All right? Now, you can do it through CosmicReality.com, which is the radio station that has this particular station on it, Radio 5G. And you can see it in the tabs how to get to 5G. But please, we have done many, many shows. Some of them, all of them were excellent by my view. But some of them are so critical to the understanding of what we're really up against. So, Michael, we're live. We're back again.
Yeah, I'm here. Are you hearing me all right?
Absolutely.
We good?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, this documentary from James Corbett, the 5G Dragnet, really needs to be seen as widely as possible. We encourage everybody, share it around. If you've got a YouTube channel yourself, post it with credit to James Corbett. And that's that's ForbiddenKnowledgeTV.net, a very credible alternative news source, because, the evidence is all there. And, I really can't imagine what more we might need to be a wake-up call. I've done a lot of work in sacred activism over the last few years, and was involved in an effort to create an enforceable human rights court internationally. And that's not necessarily everybody's cause. Andrew Harvey, who is one of the great leaders in sacred activism, he coined the term. I've met Andrew several times, a remarkable spiritual leader, and also a mystic would be a word well applied to him, a scholar. And what he tells us is, okay, find that cause out there that breaks your heart. If you just happen to be somebody who feels like you've got to do something in the world, you need to make a difference, and you're not so overburdened as so many of us are by family concerns, paying the bills, working 3 jobs, that maybe you've got a section of your life you can devote to a cause. Find the one that breaks your heart and find some way of communing with spirit. Find some way to anchor in direct communion with spirit, whatever you call it, be it, God or Allah or Krishna or Lord Jesus, whatever it be, because you're going to need that to really hang in there in a sacred cause, in an activist cause, whether it's about animal rights or it's about the environment, so all these things. And for me, it was about the code of chivalry becoming a geopolitical force and having a human rights court that wasn't serving the elite, but was addressing the systemic crimes. Well, when it comes to 5G, this is not about, hey, what's the cause that breaks your heart? This is the cause that is going to physically, literally break your heart. Health-wise, medically, this is about your freedom, this is about your children, this is about your property values, this is about the fate of planet Earth, and this is about ultimate surveillance and control. I really wish I wasn't having to share this message with you, I would really prefer to be having a much different conversation. But this is a wake-up call for the entire human family. I don't care what your cause is. If you're about animal rights, beautiful. There's a place for it. In the meantime, you're not going to be around. The biosphere will collapse. Say goodbye to your animals now while you can. There is no escaping this. So, this piece from James Corbett, is a big eye opener on it. Nancy, can we? I would love to be able to shift here from this amazing information James Corbett has shared with us to the hopeful side. It's like, okay, what can be done? What are we sharing with people about the ways of fighting this? Because I think part of what we're seeing here, when you've got David Petraeus, CIA director, being blatant about it. Oh yeah, we're going to use this. It's going to be wonderful to be able to know everything about everybody. They're being so blatant about it that they're trying to just lull us into accepting, oh, well, we're just in the Internet of Things now, and Big Brother's going to be watching no matter what we do, so let's just go along with it, enjoy our smart devices and our video games, and the fact that our garbage takes itself out on Wednesday. That they're getting that blatant with it. And what we want to remind people is, hey, go to 5G-KNOW.com, go to the tab that says the Stop 5G links. And we have listed there some really effective movements. There's the Empower movement, Reclaim Your Authority. You have the right to protect your health in your home. There's TakeBackYourPower.net. We have a link to UCC filings, the back door to stop 5G in your area, the international appeal to stop 5G on Earth and in space, how to oppose small cell towers. Go to 5G-KNOW.com. In the column next to it, we've got Reach Out and Connect Stop 5G action groups by state. And we, give you hot links to every single organization we've been able to find, various states throughout the union and internationally as well. And on that page, we have a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that I'd like to just share. Dr. King said, "Never be afraid to do the right thing, especially if the well-being of a person or animal is at stake. Society's punishments are small compared to the wounds we inflict on our soul when we look the other way." So we're here to encourage you to not look the other way, but to take whatever action you can. We're all overburdened with a lot of responsibilities and stress and pressures and worries, and you put your kids through school, and you've got bills coming in, you're working 2 or 3 jobs. But just join your local action group, sign the petition, show up at a meeting like we held at the Taos County Commissioners the other day, and make your voice felt, because this is not a future that any of us want for our kids or for the human family. So I just needed to share that with everybody. 5G-KNOW.com.
Thank you for that. Okay, if you don't mind, because, tomorrow is July 4th. Here in the States, that's a big thing. It's where we celebrate the independence of our nation. And if you will indulge me, I would like to kind of go back and talk about what they did, what they intended, and what happened.
Oh, okay, that'll be great.
Okay, just 1 sec. Had to clear my throat. Okay. At the time of the American Revolution, the British were losing control. And they were losing control because the colonies didn't need them. They were manufacturing enormous amount of goods that were being sent back to Europe, and they were creating their own money. So in Virginia, you'd be using Virginian money, and in Massachusetts money. But there wasn't a tremendous amount of trade between parts of this country. It was all localized, and so the money worked fine. Well, because why do you have currency that is accepted everywhere? Well, so you can trade all over the place. But we're talking about, a fairly contained area. But the British government was losing control. So the British government made a requirement that taxes from the colonies had to be paid with English money. Now, that would work, the Americans were willing to pay taxes, but there was no English money. They couldn't get it. So you essentially, because it wasn't part of the currency, so to get it, you essentially had to take a loan out from the Bank of England to get the money that you needed to pay your taxes. So when they threw the tea into the Boston Harbor, it wasn't because they were being taxed. It was because of the way they were being taxed. They essentially outlawed the Americans' right to produce their own currency. And in doing so, the economy of America began to collapse. The British actually forced Americans into taking military action to sever their relationship with this dominant nation that was trying to control many, many nations. It was an empire. Okay, world domination was coming from the British Empire. So when the Americans were losing their economy and their way of living and everything else because of basically a financial decision by the British, they had no option except to take military action to sever it. That was the American War, American Revolution. Now, during this, they instituted the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence essentially was a statement saying, we are human beings, and we do not have to account to you, British Crown. We have to account to God. Okay, so it was like shutting them down. It also was forced to make statements regarding the preciousness of humanity. You're due certain inalienable rights you were born with. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and, it was supposed to say the pursuit of property, but happiness. I mean, these basic human, yes, you should all be happy, you should be secure. The Constitution itself is built on the concept of common law. And common law is the God's law. They call it God's law. It's the do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. It's humane legality, let's put it that way. What happened is that as they were building the Constitution, Michael, you've got you're not muted. As they were building the Constitution, they realized that this was a fragile document in that it really did depend on the good intentions of the people that were the government. And they understood that. That's why they after they got the Constitution, they did the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights were trying to protect the concept of the masses are what are important. The people are what is important. Not the federal government. Not this thing we have to build in order to be able to, as a nation, do diplomatic agreements. As a nation, to secure our borders. As a nation, to build an infrastructure. And at the time, the infrastructure they were looking at was essentially the post office. Okay. Later on in Eisenhower's time frame, that was like the highway system. Okay, well, the federal government's got to build the major highway system. That right was not actually given by the Constitution. They could run the post office, but they had no rights. So it's a fragile government. Technically, the Constitution is a very limiting document to the federal government. Now, they have the Civil War, and during the Civil War, both the North and the South were beat up terribly. But in the end, you're still dealing with one country, the United States. But the United States was in a state of dissolution, really, because the resources were gone. They had spent them on the battlefield. So at that time, the Congress was approached by international bankers who said, we'll bail you out. We'll give you the money that you need to get everything right again, build your highways and your post offices and things here. And all we're asking for is the District of Columbia. Now, the District of Columbia is 10 square miles that is, by the Constitution, given to the federal government. But it's the only property that the federal government, by the Constitution, is allowed to own, unless the U.S. government, the nation, the unified states in the federal government, acting in their interest. The federal government, if it goes to war and gets, takes property from whoever you went to war with, well, then that would be federal government. Or if the federal government wanted to buy property for some reason, well, that was also allowed. What was not allowed was the statement by the federal government that it essentially has taken over 50% of some of the states, because areas have been declared national property, federal parks, all this sort of thing. If you look at how much federal government owns in the United States, you'll be stunned. And it wasn't paid for. Trust me, it was stolen. It was just like, oh, those people, they don't know what they're doing. They get with the state, senators who is as corrupt as the federal government, and they say, well, let's just do this, and nobody pays any attention because it's all wilderness and nobody lives there. And, then you realize, oh, they want the lumber. Oh, they want the oil. Oh, they want this other stuff. Oh, they want the water. Okay, so this is the octopus of the federal government doing things that are absolutely unconstitutional. Back to the Bill of Rights. Not only in the Bill of Rights did they make the statements regarding what our rights are. Okay, it makes some other statements like the Second Amendment. Everybody points to it and says we've got the rights to own guns. Yes, you have the right to own gun, but by that constitutional Bill of Rights, you also have the responsibility to stand up and use those guns if your country is being taken over by domestic terrorists. That's the intent of what they were saying. Is, okay, we're afraid that the people could lose control because of a tyranny kind of people up there. Well, let's make them not only able, because they've got the guns, but responsible. People, you've got to be the watchers. So that wasn't even enough. They decided, okay, let's do the 10th Amendment. And the 10th Amendment specifically states that the federal government is only given the powers as designated by the Constitution of the United States. So if it's not absolutely stated there, then dang, you don't have the right to do it. And if the states can't fix this, then it's up to the people to fix this. Again, throwing it onto the people. It's, in the end, it's your responsibility. So what went wrong? I mean, this okay, so virtually every law that has been ongoing since the Civil War is unconstitutional. Because what they did in agreeing to give up D.C. to the bankers for the loan to get out of trouble, they gave the actual seat, think of it, we're talking about the seat of government, the Justice Department, the FBI, the Congress, the House of Representatives, all of that now is within the boundaries of something that's owned by an international cabal. Okay, so the 42nd Congress should have, they were it was totally unconstitutional what they did. But when I first heard about this, I looked at it. I said, "Oh my gosh, this is really true. We've been taken over by corporations and bankers." Now, at the time, the corporations and bankers were all the same, and that's gone through, for decades. when you have a corporation, you are especially the big ones. You're highly involved with the bankers. It's the way that the system works. So what happened was that in a gradual way, they were able because they've got the the physical buildings, the physical operations right there in the District of Columbia. They essentially usurped government control over these under the bankers and the corporations. Now, I don't even understand all of the intricacies of how they actually did this, to be honest, because it was done over decades and it was done surreptitiously, and it basically was not so much changing a system as controlling the people. So you'd have, let's say the Secretary of, let's listen to FCC, okay? The person who's in charge of the FCC, where did they come from? From the telecommunications groups. You continually see that somebody leaves government and then goes into the corporations. The weird one is when you start looking to see what corporations these politicians and these bureaucrats originally came from. You'll find that they're all the same corporations. They go into a corporation, they get the skills to be able to do this, and then they're, go into politics, become a senator. It's from their births in many cases. They're groomed to do this. So it wasn't a matter of essentially changing the system, except in that critical, giving DC to them. It was its control over the people. So what you've got is that this Congress, which set this thing up, they did one good thing. And if you're going to believe in the law, if you're going to stand up for the law, then this is a very important thing. If you're going to do what, the technocrats and the bureaucrats and the corporations want you to do, is just dismiss the law as not being important. Okay? Because that's what they're essentially trying to get us to do. Dismiss the Constitution. Dismiss all the laws. You are not free. Accept it. Okay? If you want to go that way, well then you're listening to the wrong radio show. But if you're looking to make a change, the changes are all there. All they have to do is have a Congress, a Senate, and a House that will actually revoke that right. Because it was written into the document that established the District of Columbia under the control of this international cabal. It was put in the law. So all Congress has to do is come up and say, we're revoking that. Okay? You got a question?
Yeah, well, we always encourage people, you, Nancy, are always encouraging people, hey, do your own research, look at this yourself. If you go online and you start to do a search, I'm not going to use the verb Google anymore, because try using ecosia.org instead, ECOSIA.org. You'll get a censorship-free search term. But anyway, you do a search, do it on the District of Columbia Organic Act of 1871. And you're going to get a lot of pro and con. There's going to be, responses on that search page that come up. When you do that, that'll say how the U.S. became a corporation. There'll be others that say, debunking the myth that the 1871 Act, turned the U.S. over to the bankers. There's both sides of it, and, you do your research and decide for yourself. What I would also encourage people to do is, okay, this is 2019. Let's, do our research about today. Let's do some research also on the search term Princeton bipartisan study plutocracy in the U.S. The Princeton University study from only about 5 or 6 years ago that concluded that the U.S. is no longer a democracy. We're a plutocracy or an oligarchy, which means government by the few, government by the wealthy. Plutocracy is government by the wealthy. oligarchy government by the few. And of course, that is completely antithetical to the spirit of tomorrow, July 4th. It is completely antithetical to what Nancy has been describing for us. And, ironically, when we talk about, as you were saying, Nancy, how the British government in 1776, by that time, had essentially forced the colonists into rebellion and into issuing the Declaration of Independence because they were, placing them massively into debt by insisting the taxes be paid with British pounds and forbidding the colonies from having their own currency. Those outraged colonists who threw the tea off the ships in Boston Harbor disguised as Native Americans, that the reason those guys were outraged is because they felt they were being denied their rights as Englishmen. Because, like it or not, the British government was being tyrannical. King George III was being a tyrannical idiot. And, Parliament was following through. But there actually was this heritage in English history of Magna Carta, of what happened, when Charles I was beheaded, Cromwell and the Commonwealth came in. It was basically the Taliban for however long it was, 18 years in England of this Puritan oppressive government. And that led to, a awakening of the spirit of independence and human rights in the English people, which resulted in the slow watering down of the power of the monarchy, which resulted in the strengthening of Parliament vis-a-vis the monarchy, so these Americans of our founding fathers, they didn't grow up thinking of themselves as Americans. They were loyal Englishmen up until the tyranny of the British Crown, step by step by step, just forced them into becoming independent. So it's ironic that, the heritage of our country, we inherited this, democratic instinct, human rights instinct, Magna Carta awareness from our heritage through England. At least, hey, I'm Irish. My people were still over in County Cork. But, that's where the outrage of the founding fathers and colonists came from. That, hey, you are treating us like slaves. Never mind that we have enslaved, Africans, but you're treating us like slaves because taxation without representation is tyranny. And so, it's an ironic fact. And for me, when I look at the big arc of history, which I like to do, you go back to Magna Carta, 1215 AD in Runnymede, where the barons forced King John to sign Magna Carta, which is acknowledged as the foundation of human rights in the West. Well, that just happened to be largely a movement of the Knights Templar. Now it's a whole different era. It's feudalism. It's a vastly different economic system, but it was the beginning of defending the human spirit against the divine right of kings. And it's been a really long struggle, and they've just had to use different language. Oh, the royal family is just, it's a nice representative of the best of Englishness. Well, yeah, behind the scenes, the royal family is still incredibly corrupt, in bed with the central bankers. They did everything they could to make sure, thanks to people like Alexander Hamilton. Sorry, he's not an American hero. Thanks to people like that, who were largely puppets of the British bankers, they made sure that they gradually, step by step, got control of America's financial system, got control of American currency. Took them a century, but they finally did it in the Aldrich Act of 1913. And so when we celebrate tomorrow, the 4th of July and Independence Day, and for those of us who are Civil War scholars who don't celebrate but commemorate the Battle of Gettysburg, which took place, on this date in 1863. It was 3 days, but July 3rd was the key date, Pickett's charge, that we remember what they were fighting for. I'm sorry. I still have trouble choking back tears when I read the Gettysburg Address aloud, when I see Spielberg's Lincoln movie. It's a fantastic film about what this country is really about. So when we're looking at, the 5G rollout, folks, this is absolutely antithetical to everything it ever meant to be an American, let alone being a free human being. So I really appreciate you bringing all that out, Nancy, about the District of Columbia Organic Act of 1871. Yeah, people, do your research about it, but also check out the Princeton study. It's more up to date about the fact that Congress has been bought and sold, and that it is the big corporations. Basically, the conclusion of that study was that the preferences of the people have a negligible impact upon legislation. That legislation is, in fact, organized and controlled by the plutocratic elite. And, you just look at the long arc of history. You can go back to Pericles in Athens in, 500 BC, and it's about the oligarchs versus the people. You go forward to Rome, the patricians versus the plebeians. You go forward to Magna Carta, it's the gradual resistance against the divine right of kings. You flash forward to the Revolution and the 4th of July, and you go further forward in American history to the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. Thomas Jefferson's the real hero, folks, not Alexander Hamilton. I know it's a nice, beautiful, exciting Broadway musical, but to me, Thomas Jefferson knew what the spirit of this country was about, and he knew that Alexander Hamilton and the Federalists were essentially in the hands of the bankers who wanted to reclaim control over our new country. So let's celebrate it, let's remember the Americans on both sides who died at Gettysburg. And I am proud of what it meant to be an American and what it still means if we reclaim it. I'm on a watch list, most likely, some government watch list, for saying things like defending the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, the Gettysburg Address, Magna Carta, out here on the radio. This is where we've come to. Yeah, this is the radical stuff that can get you placed on a government watch list these days. So that's what the big picture is behind America and 5G these days, in my humble view. I've run out of words, Nancy. I hope you got something to say.
Well, to continue the discussion I was having, because I want people to understand that what it's come down to is a question of law. Because when they made the changes in the D.C. environment, and essentially gave up, it's exactly like Michael was saying, the federal government, is big and all powerful. When that actually happened, you have a situation where it was allowed to happen because of the institution from the federal level down of a concept of admiralty law. See, the Constitution was set up under common law. Now you got this admiralty law. What's that? Well, it's also called military law. But what it is it's the law that evolved out of the huge maritime shipping situation when the colonies were doing good and they're sending goods to Europe and Europe's sending all of that. Well, what happens is that a ship comes in with a cargo and there's something wrong with the cargo, and the guy that ordered it said, no, I'm not going to take it. Now, at that point, the ship's captain is, got a real problem on his hands because he's not going to make the money for the trip. So, in order to deal with these kind of disputes, admiralty courts were set up, and that's what it was. It was for commercial reasons only. It was like, is the ship captain correct, or is the shop owner correct? So this admiralty law, which was designed to cover a very basic problem in the world, suddenly is usurped by the cabal and used to create the entire federal legal system. Because why do we say the ship of state? What the hell does that mean? The ship of state. When you're talking like, a government like the United States. Well, what it means is that the admiralty law is designed to settle disputes between the ship of the government, the federal government, this massive whatever it is, right? And the common person. Or another company. But it's always designed to protect the ship of state. So when you get into admiralty law and the federal court systems, you have no rights to common law. And the same situation is, also prevalent in Great Britain. So this twist of common law versus admiralty law is where the problem is. And I think that the powers that be began to realize that the people they're trying to control are beginning to understand this. And this is just, look at what happened with the Tea Party. The Tea Party erupted and said there's something wrong. They didn't even have a platform when it first occurred. And then they became very influential in, like 18 months later in the U.S. elections. Major Senate, state, government elections. How did that happen so fast? I think that scared the crap out of those people. And then you have the Occupy movement. There were signs that the people are not only becoming upset, but they're getting organized. And so now you're going like, wow, if they figure this out, we're all... Who was it? Was it George Sr.? George Bush Sr. said, if the American people knew what we did, they would lynch us. So that's what they're afraid of, is that all of a sudden all of the bad stuff that they're doing, but they've got reasons for doing it, but they know it's bad. I mean, you know when you're doing bad, right? Unless you're a sociopath or a psychopath, and that maybe is the answer. But what happened was that the people were beginning to realize that admiralty law was what was keeping us under control, and that there are ways of getting rid of that, i.e. institute common law versus admiralty law. The Federal Reserve, oh my God, too big to fail. If you had failed, then you would have gotten out of the picture, and the states would have taken over, and the states would have been making the profits off of the loans instead of you, who gave yourself huge, bonuses because we, the people, through the corrupt corporation that is called the federal government's Congress and Senate, decided to bail you out. I mean, the whole thing is, like I say, insane. Absolutely insane. So what we need to do now is we need to realize, as citizens not only of the United States but of the world, that there is, you can look and you can say, oh, it's just happened, it's sort of circumstances have created this situation. No, this has been planned. This has been planned by the grandfathers, the great-grandfathers of the people who are now trying to pull it off. The reason that they're hurrying is because we're waking up too fast. And so now it's a rush for them to get it out before we can get organized. So I beg you, please go to 5G-know, KNOW.com. Begin your own investigation into the information that's available. And then find out where they're organizing near you.
Exactly. Yeah. Some of the other great links on our website that Nancy just shared. We share links to a lot of other really effective organizations. EHTrust.org. EHTRUS like Sam T. EHTrust.org is a terrific site. 5Gspaceappeal.org, takebackyourpower.net, stop5g.net. We share links to all of these great sites for you, and state by state as well. And they're growing. There's probably a lot more organizations out there that we haven't yet caught up with. So, so do your own research on this. And yeah, I like what you just said, Nancy, about how it's we look at our grandfathers. Do I have that right? Were you talking about the good guys' grandfathers or the bad guys' grandfathers?
Well, the bad guys' grandfathers, but I look at those people, the 6 million that died in World War II, fighting the same friggin' group of people that they fought then. They thought they won. No, they just came over here.
Yeah.
It's like they have no loyalty to nation, no loyalty to culture, no loyalty to society. And if you can wrap your heads think about all of those James Bonds and those other movies where there was this ultimate villain wanting to just do awful things, that they're real. They're more real than James Bond.
Yeah, it's pretty hard for most of us to believe. It's where the cognitive dissonance comes in, where people hear this, and as they hear the evidence, and their reason becomes more and more unable to dismiss the evidence, something kicks in with like, I don't know if I can live in that world. Excuse me, I have to go. Sorry to interrupt your conversation. Love what you're sharing. I've got to pick up my kid at school, or never mind. That's just, they turn off. But the thing about 5G is that you don't have that as an option anymore. You pick up your kid from school. Well, guess what? They've installed a 5G cell tower on the school building, and your kids either got nosebleeds or like they just shut a school down in California because the kids are suddenly coming down with a rare form of cancer ordinarily found in people exposed at close contact to radar EMF. So that's,
Whoa! Where's that? What do you have?
That was from last week. That was from our talk with Mark. That rare form of cancer that kids are coming down with.
Yes, but I hadn't heard about a school being closed.
Yeah, there was a school closed, and that was just for a 4G tower, newly installed 4G tower, and suddenly there's a rash of heart attacks and cancer among 10-year-olds. So anyway, so the cognitive dissonance kicks in. And I think it was George Herbert Walker Bush was talking to, that very persistent female journalist, older lady, who he probably didn't take very seriously because, Dorothy, I think her name was. I'll look it up. But he said to her, oh, well, Dorothy, if the people knew what we really did, they'd chase us down the street and lynch us. And, of course, Bush comes from a banking family. Prescott Bush was actually fined by the government for dealing with Hitler. That's a fact behind the Bush family, but never mind. Well, we're coming up on our last 10 minutes or so here, and we're talking about the 4th of July tomorrow, and what it means to be an American, and what we need to know, like Nancy's been pointing out, about the step-by-step process of how the American government and democracy got sold, and how we can reclaim it. And this whole issue of common law being strengthened and utilized to transcend and overcome admiralty law as it's meant to. They can't really make it go away. They'd love to be able to erase the history books. They'd love to be able to recast Magna Carta or the Declaration of Independence or the Gettysburg Address, or what the Civil War, how it began. But they can't do that, and they can't make common law really go away. When I look at my family's history, and it may seem a bit quixotic, which is derived from Don Quixote, tilting at windmills, wanting to restore chivalry. Well, that's been a big part of my story, is the quest to make the code of chivalry a meaningful geopolitical force again. And what is it, 155 years ago today? The Battle of Gettysburg, right? July 3rd. My great-grandfather not my great-great, but my great-grandfather, John Dunn, born in Ireland, I think it was in 1848, came over because of the famine with his family as just a kid. And when the Civil War broke out, he joined the Union Army. And he was only 15 years old. They found out he was 15. They sent him back home, said, "Kid, you're too young." He turned 16, turned around, joined the Army as soon as he was legal, just in time to fight at the Battle of Gettysburg. And his unit was wiped out because, of course, the casualty rates were so astronomical that day. He ended up being a sergeant at 16, and when I was a kid, we still had his Civil War saber. So when the war was over, my great-grandfather was a battle-hardened veteran of only 18 years old. He'd been through Gettysburg. He was on Sherman's March to the Sea. You know, it was like a lot of Irishmen, Irish Americans. They reached the end of the war and said, what are we going to do? Well, we love Ireland, and we love freedom, and we're going to try to free Ireland. So they formed the Fenian Raiders, thousands of Irish veterans of the Union Army. The plan was to attack Canada, conquer Canada, and trade it for the freedom of Ireland to the British Crown. So that's the kind of quixotic, crazy, ambitious thing that bloodline that I come from. I looked up the Fenian Raiders when I learned about this in the encyclopedia, and they actually have a marching song that my great-grandfather no doubt marched and sang with his fellow Fenian Raiders on their way north to attack Quebec and Toronto and Montreal. They're credited by Canadian historians with forcing Canada to become a nation to fend off these crazy Irishmen. Anyway, as they marched north, they sang, here's the verse, "We are the Fenian Raiders, skilled in the arts of war. We've come to fight for Ireland, the land that we adore. Many a battle we have won, along with the boys in blue. And now we'll go and conquer Canada, for we've nothing else to do." So now it might seem that crazy that we can actually stop the 5G rollout. It might seem comparable to a bunch of crazy Irishmen thinking they're going to conquer Canada and trade it for the freedom of Ireland. But it's not, folks. It's within our power. It's our God-given right as children of God, as Americans or British or French or German or Filipino, whatever you are, because this is a worldwide rollout. We have the God-given right to stand up for our freedom, for our families, for Gaia, for the planet, for Mother Earth. And so we really encourage you. We thank you for being here with us. We encourage you, go to 5G-KNW.com, go to ehtrust.org, takebackyourpower.net, and see what you can do locally. This movement is spreading like wildfire, not only across America, but across the world. The number of cities and municipalities and state governments that are suing the FCC, that are demanding through the precautionary principle, hey, don't roll this out without doing health studies. Like the minister in Brussels said, the health of the people of Brussels is not mine to bargain away for money. So there's a massive movement. We encourage everybody, do what you can. We're all under a lot of pressure, just getting by, most of us, but there's a lot that can be done. For us, with the Sacred Academy of Geoenergetics here in Colorado, that's the acronym SAGE. That's geo-energetics.org. We are doing the Jai Gaia, that's Victory to Planet Earth, Sacred Activism Tour to help awaken people to what's happening with 5G. And there are many other movements around the country. And certainly at 5G-KNOW, we have a donation page that is not tax deductible. We are not a 501c3. Just like you, we're earning a living and doing the best we can. And if you're able to help us, we are grateful for it. It'll help with the Sacred Activism 5G Wake Up Tour. So that's been my piece for a few minutes here, Nancy. Are there any thoughts you'd like to bring back to the front for our listeners?
Well, over on CosmicReality.net, we do have the the baseball caps with the embroidery of "Where goes the bee, go we all, beware" of 5G. You can purchase those, and they also are going to make T-shirts. So we're not saying that you have to go through us to do this, but what I do highly recommend is that when you begin to organize, or if you're in an organization, the thing about the caps is when we send them out with like 20 business size cards that has very specific information regarding 5G. On one side, it's, your property is going to go down. The health, the things we normally talk about. But then on the back, it really talks about, because if we could stop 5G, we still got the 4G problem. We still got the sixth extinction problem. The biosphere is collapsing. And on the back, we address that situation. This is much deeper than, just the 5G. If we can when we stop 5G, we've still got to confront 4G and the collapse of the biosphere. Luckily, shungite in the 4G environment makes a massive turnaround in the biosphere, as demonstrated with the bees. So we've got, it's a terrible thing, but it's an opportunity for us all to come together, is what it is. Because before generation, just the Wi-Fi that was there was killing the entire insect population. Once they go, there's a collapse, from everything that ate, below them. So it's a godsend that they sent the 5G when they did, because now we're all waking up to the awfulness of it. And when you wake up to the awfulness of that, then you're paying attention to what else have they done. So it's critical that we continue to advertise ourselves as being people who are against 5G. The baseball cap, okay? Somebody looks at the baseball cap and you go, you wonder what the beware 5G, right? Yeah, and they kind of look at you. Maybe they'll shake their heads. Maybe you'll see a yes. But just hand them a card. We need you to wear some kind of a button. I say this pretty near every show. Wear some kind of a button. Get people to know that they're not alone in thinking that this is terrible. It is terrible, but there's an awful lot of people out there that actually understand that and want to work. And that's why, at least, and we're probably not keeping up with the organizations that are cropping up. And if you happen to be an organization and you're not listed, please contact us. Not only will we list you, but we will, ask you to come on the radio to tell how you're fighting. What's your situation and how are you and your people specifically dealing with it? If you know of anybody that is trying to get organized, send them to the 5gno.com or any of the other places. Get locked into something that keeps you updated, that you can look at and you can see and you can feel like this is a massive organization. When we started out, there was nothing out there really, and either we weren't seeing them or all of a sudden, many people were doing the same thing we did, and all of a sudden you've got all these different variations of very, very good, high-quality people involved in telling you the truth.
Yeah, exactly. Nancy, I am looking at a Independence Day prayer that came up on Facebook, and with like a minute or so left here, if you'll indulge me, we might go a minute or so over. But this is a beautiful prayer for Independence Day from Rosamond Ikshvaku Miller, who is a priest of a Gnostic sanctuary, a Magdalene order priest in California. Are we good to go to segue on into our friend Mr. McCartney singing Let It Be at the end of this prayer?
Sure.
Okay, here we go. This is a prayer for Independence Day from Rosamond Ikshvaku Miller. O sovereign and exalted power, divine presence that lies as the impetus in all things, we give thanks for the wisdom that caused our nation to be formed. We bless your name for the abundant blessings bestowed upon your children in this land. We put into your hands all the afflictions that beset our world and our nation. Look through the eyes of your mercy upon all those that are suffering under abuse of laws and authority. Look upon all of those who are victims of hate, racism, discrimination, bigotry, greed, or revenge. Let tolerance, wisdom, and compassion walk our land. Look upon your children when they vote in November, that greater chaos may be averted. When your messenger, the Christ, and the prophets of all religions walked the earth, they were often homeless. As a child, his parents took him across the border into Egypt, just as he could not find a place to rest his head. Our men and women, our children, our elderly, the sick, the insane, the addicts, those who come to us for shelter and protection, and our animals have no place to rest. Let no one be dismissed as other. Look upon all with compassion. For a nation is judged by the treatment given to its weakest, not to its most powerful. Infuse the hearts of lawmakers and of those in power with your wisdom and compassion. Look upon your children suffering from the ravages of war and economic hardship, not only those within our nation, but also those within all the nations of the world, as well as all of those that are in exile. We, in this sanctuary, give voice to all your children crying to you in their need. We lay at your feet all jingoism, theological arguments, all differences in philosophy and belief, all empty language, all smugness and self-righteousness, all ideologies and greed, and all the ideas of those that try to impose their will without regard for the freedoms and needs of others. Let your voice and presence replace those that pretend to speak in your name. Let your understanding and compassion reign in our world. This we present, not only for our nation, but also for all nations of the world. Amen. Thank you for being with us. God bless.